Hey everyone, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today I've got a little bit of a different background. It's just because I'm out of town for the weekend, so I'll just do with what I got. I'm going to do some reviews and ratings today, and I've got some older games that I got to the table this weekend, but I got some brand new ones too. And we'll start off with one of those older games I would consider a modern classic in Splendor. We started out this week breaking out Splendor, and it was mostly because I got the playmat for it recently. Splendor is this sort of drafting set collection game where on your turn you will be either grabbing chips or buying the cards with chips. It is extremely simple, but it's still very enjoyable. Splendor is always a decent choice for any night of the week, and I rate Splendor a 7. But with that game mat, I'm going to give it some extra credit points and bump it up to a 7.5 because, hey, it's my rules, okay people? Let's move on quickly to the new expansion of It's a Wonderful World. So the expansion to It's a Wonderful World is called Corruption and Ascension. First I'll talk about the base game though. It's a Wonderful World is a card drafting, engine building game all about solving the puzzle of which cards you should build and which cards to recycle for more resources. The cards you build will give you more resources, which will then in return allow you to build more cards. This is all about mathing your cards out to figure out what you need to help you. I'm giving this a big 9 rating, and because I think it loses a little bit in the solo mode, as do most drafting games, I'm giving it a 7.5 for a solo rating, but that's still really good. Now taking a look at the expansion, it adds a few things. It turns this from a 5-player game now to 7 players. It adds a few new faction cards and some other cards that have huge point values. Also now it brings in some of these corruption cards that will give you some resources. But now some cards will have negative resources on them to take away resources instead of adding them, but it will reward you in other big ways. I'm giving the expansion the same rating as the base game, a 9, because it just adds more to a game I already love. So if you like It's a Wonderful World, I recommend this expansion. This is an expansion that I will add every time I play this game now. Next, let's move on to a nature game, Parks. Parks is a game that a lot of people seem to really enjoy. It kind of feels like Tokaido in that you have one path you take and you can move as far along the path as you want, but you will be skipping all these other spots. You play 4 seasons and the track expands by 1 each season and is randomized. I like it better than Tokaido, but to me you don't really make any hard choices. On your turn you usually just kind of go to the next obvious spot, in my opinion. I enjoy the look and the components of the game, and could see this as being a nice gateway style game, but it's just kind of average for me, so it's getting a rating of 6.5. But seems like most other people rate this a lot higher than me. Let's move on to the tile-moving puzzle game Shifting Stones. On a turn, you will have cards in your hand, and you can either score a card, flip a tile, or switch 2 tiles. To score a card, the tiles have to make the specific formation on the card, but to flip a tile to a different color, since the 2 sides are different colors, or to switch 2 adjacent tiles, you have to actually spend one of your cards to do it. So obviously you won't be able to score that card. I played this one solo a few times, and it's a bit fiddly, that solo play, so I'm giving it a solo rating of 6. Then I brought this to game night and played it multiplayer a few times, and the multiplayer is better, but still, I'm only bumping this up to a 6.5. Moving on to a roll and write game. Super Skill Pinball is the roll and write version of an actual pinball machine. You will be rolling dice to see how the pinball moves around the board. I have only played the one machine so far a couple times. You will be marking off spots that you hit and keeping track of your score. I'll say this, if you like pinball, there's a good chance you will really like this game. To me, it was very repetitive, and I didn't really even want to play it after the first time, but I did try it a few more times. I'm going to give it a 6 rating, but I'll say I could see quite a few people actually really liking this game to waste some time and beating their high scores. Moving on to a Shem Phillips worker placement game in Raiders of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea is definitely not new to me, but I introduced a few new people to it this week. This is a worker placement game with a twist, as most Shem Phillips games are. On your turn, you will place a worker and take that action. But also, You then will pick up a different worker on the board and also take that action. You're going to be recruiting new Vikings and building up your crew to go raiding. I give this game a 7.5 rating. This to me is a very good game to show people new to the hobby if you've already showed them simpler worker placement games like Lords of Waterdeep. This is a step up from that, but still pretty straightforward, simple game that can be a ton of fun for everyone. Let's take a look at another game I've played a bunch of in Scythe. I got Scythe back to the table this week with a 5-player game. This is definitely not a new game to me, as I've played it a few dozen times and all of the expansions. I have to say, I actually prefer this game at a higher player count, anywhere from 5 to 7, because I like the tension it brings. The tighter the board is, the more you have to be worried about where everybody is on the board. This is a game that is very high on my all-time favorites, so it does get a rating of 10 for me. I have all the expansions for them, which I highly recommend them, except maybe the Wind Gambit, which adds airships, which I could take it or leave it. The Rise of Fenris campaign expansion, though, might be my favorite expansion of all time. Now let's look at a much smaller, simpler game in Nefarious. Nefarious is a 10-year-old game by now, but I had never played it before last weekend when a friend had brought it. It is a game that uses simultaneous action selection. It is a very simple game where you only actually have 4 different things you can do. You are playing as a mad scientist trying to invent these wacky little inventions that are worth points, and the first to 20 points wins. It is a cute little game that I'm going to give a 6.5. I don't know that I'd want to play it that often, but if someone asks me to play it, it's not like I would object to playing it a couple more times. Taking a look now at 2 of the most recent Marvel Champions heroes, starting with Quicksilver. I got the Quicksilver Hero Pack expansion for Marvel Champions to the table for the first time this week. Quicksilver is pretty unique from the other heroes of the game. He starts out with 1s across the board for all of his stats, but a lot of his cards bump those stats up a bit. But what makes him pretty powerful is his natural ability of being able to unexhaust once per phase, meaning you are going to be able to attack or thwart twice every round. Plus, when it comes to the defense, you will always be able to defend once for free, or twice if you really need it. I really like the plays I've gotten with him so far, and he is a hero I can see myself choosing quite frequently from now on. I'm going to give him a rating of 8.5, and I definitely like him a lot more than I was anticipating. Next hero we'll look at is Wasp. Wasp is a character I actually wasn't even excited about. I thought she would be a carbon copy of Ant-Man, but worse. In fact, I had gotten her pack last month, and when I played Marvel Champions, I didn't even try her out. As it turns out, she plays very differently from Ant-Man. She can deal tons of damage, and her base deck she comes with is Aggression, which usually is my preferred deck to play with. Unlike Ant-Man, I did not find myself switching forms a ton. Her giant form is much more powerful to me, and I would only switch to her tiny form if I drew some card that she needed to be in tiny form to perform that card's ability. I liked her a ton more than I thought, but again, I had very low hope for her going in. I will give her a respectable 7.5 rating, which would probably put her somewhere in the lower half of my favorite Marvel Champion heroes, but definitely doesn't mean she's bad, since I do like pretty much all of them. That will conclude this episode of Reviews and Ratings and adjourn the meeting. So if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe to see more videos from me in the future, including top 10s, how to plays, and more reviews and ratings. Thanks for watching, everyone, and take care.